Welcome back, fellow nostalgia seekers. This is Howling Through Neo Tokyo, where we hold on for dear life as master mangaka Katsuhiro Otomo takes us on a wild ride through the perilous streets of a city where psychokinetic wonders wait around every corner. Last time, we watched as Kaneda and Kei fled the secret military base with an incapacitated Akira in tow. They fled through the streets of the city, where they had a near brush with the military's caretaker robots, tasked with upholding a state of martial law. Lady Miyako, distrusting Nizu's ability to complete the job, tasked one of her disciples with retrieving Akira instead. She sent Sakaki, a young girl with fledgling telekinetic powers. Nizu had his own plan, however, capitalizing on his chance encounter with Kei to get Akira delivered into his clutches. As a result of the incident at the Olympic site, it appears Colonel Shikishima lost his stranglehold over Neo Tokyo. Following the results of a federal investigation, an entirely new government was placed in power, giving them complete control over the military and its citizens under martial law. The colonel, however, also had different plans, as well as loyal men. He sent troops into the streets tasked with retrieving Akira. He also took the drastic step of unleashing the Espers in order to complete the task. With his powers yet to awaken completely, we witnessed Akira get passed from hand to hand like a superpowered MacGuffin. Nizu betrayed the resistance in order to kidnap him. The faction of the resistance led by Kei and Kaneda then betrayed him right back. Then Miyako's disciples cut in, taking the boy into their control before being forced to hide him in an attempt to evade both the military and Nizu's guards. In tonight's episode, the stakes come to an all-time high, as the chase for Akira brings about some events that completely change the landscape of Neo Tokyo, and, potentially, the entire world that Akira takes place in. This one's action-packed, so I'm really excited to get into it. I'm Boy Meets TV, and tonight I'll be your guide through Neo Tokyo's tangled web of dark secrets and psychokinetic wonders. Chapter 15, Psychic Duel. Chapter 15 opens with Sakaki and Akira as they continue to evade pursuit. Yet to awaken fully, Akira is unable to protect himself, so Sakaki has to hide him in a dumpster, saying that she'll be right back for him. Just then, a group of Nizu's personal guards arrive. Sakaki rushes them headlong, kneeing a man in the face before using her powers to catapult herself high over the group. She hits the ground running, leading the guards away from Akira's hiding spot. Ryu observes from nearby, noting the peculiarity of Nizu's personal guards being involved in such a skirmish. In their pursuit of Akira, a group of Nizu's men encountered a military squadron. The squadron opens fire on the guards, sparking a firefight. The guards retreat, but the soldiers follow them, driving right through buildings in their pursuit. Nearby, Sakaki continues to run, using her telepathy to contact Mozu as she does. She tells Mozu that Akira is safe and that they must lure everybody away from his hiding spot. Mozu, hunched over against a wall and drenched in sweat, responds in the affirmative. As Sakaki makes her way through the streets, a tank comes up on her trail. She slips into a nearby alleyway. However, the soldiers saw her white outfit, which fits the description for Akira. Because of that, they pursue her, calling into dispatch as they do. Kaneda, having overtaken a tank with Chiyoko and Kei, intercepts a message via radio. They decide to follow the patrol to the 12th district. Meanwhile, Ryu continues to follow the tracks left behind by Miyako's disciples. He winds up in an alley where he hears a strange noise coming from a dumpster. The scene cuts away just as his attention is drawn to it. Cornered by the military, we see Mozu ready herself to attack. That's when Sakaki intervenes, telling Mozu she can't use her powers when she's that fatigued. However, Mozu doesn't see another option. She uses her powers to demolish the wall behind her, grabbing cinder blocks and slabs of concrete with her powers to hurl at the tank. the force of which is so powerful, the tank explodes on impact. Mozu pants with exhaustion as she vacates the scene. In her path, she encounters some unexpected observers: Takashi, aka number 26, and Colonel Shikishima. The colonel demands to know who trained Mozu's psychic powers. Even in her weakened state, however, she doesn't hesitate to tell him off. Clearly, the colonel took it personally, as he tells Takashi to test the girl's powers. Mozu doesn't intend to take it lying down, however. She goes on the offensive, immediately attacking Takashi. The colonel fears for number 26's well-being, but the inferno conjured by Mozu diffuses around him, revealing that he was completely untouched by her attack. Regretful of his actions, Takashi unleashes a powerful force on the girl, killing her. Sensing the pain of her friend nearby, Sakaki cries out, telepathically in a bit of desperation, but there's no response. However, the power released in the act alerts Takashi to her presence. He and the colonel follow her trail, followed by the vehicles used to transport Kyoko and Masaru, the other two espers. Kyoko states that her power of foresight is cloudy, but she can feel their proximity to Akira. As the sun rises, we see the destruction Kaneda, Chiyoko, and Kei wrought with their commandeered tank. Fearing that they're lost, Kaneda pokes his head out to try and get their bearings before they move forward. We then see Nizu's guards battling the military as Kaneda's tank crashes through the wall in front of them, catching them off guard. After some discussion, our protagonists decide to steamroll right over anyone who stands in their way. One of the guards has an RPG, however. He uses it to take out the tank's treads, leaving them a sitting duck. They begin to spin the cannon on the tank, and that's when they start blasting. This creates a fog of chaos and destruction through which they're able to exit the tank and escape on foot. We then catch back up with Ryu as he approaches the dumpster to figure out what's making noise inside. He lifts the lid, shocked to learn that it's a child. He has no idea at the moment that it's Akira, but he helps the boy out of the dumpster anyway. Our perspective then shifts back to Kaneda. We get this funny sequence where we see him stumble out of the cloud of smoke, followed by Kei. When Kei comes out of the cloud of smoke, she realizes she's been holding the hand of one of Nizu's guards the entire time. The guard sputters and coughs, but he doesn't have any time to process the situation as Chiyoko barrels him over as she charges out of the cloud. She absolutely brutalizes the man, tossing him out the door like he's Jazz from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The trio then resume their search for Akira. Meanwhile, Nizu's men are locked into a skirmish with the military. They resign to holding them off while Nizu retreats back to his home. The mousy little man shuffles through the alleys of Neo-Tokyo, cane tapping on the pavement intermittently as he goes. He huffs and puffs, only pausing to curse when he sees two figures approaching through the shadows. It's Ryu, who has Akira in tow. Both men are shocked when recognition dawns on them, but Nizu doubly so, owing to Ryu's companion. It doesn't take long for Ryu's own shock to intensify when Nizu yells out the boy's name. Aside from just being shocked, Nizu's also pissed that Ryu's inserted himself into business that he was explicitly warned away from. Because, for him, it's a sign that Ryu has been a double agent for Lady Miyako all along. As Ryu attempts to plead his case, Nizu reaches behind his back, pulling out a gun. He takes aim at Ryu, who shoves Akira aside and manages to dive out of the way by the time Nizu pulls the trigger. Ryu pulls his own weapon, landing a shot that leaves Nizu bloody and sprawled across the pavement. Instinctually, Ryu feels bad, but there's no time to dwell. As a unit of soldiers turns into the alleyway, Ryu scoops up the child and runs. We then see a panel of Sakaki mourning her friends, followed by a panel of Kanada's crew fleeing. Then we see Nizu's personal guards giving themselves up as the military corners them. Out of sight, around the corner, Ryu listens in as the soldiers put out an APB for him and Akira. He guides the child across the street as they manage to narrowly evade a squad of soldiers by slipping into a dark and cluttered alley to get out of sight. As the sun rises fully, we check in on Kanada and crew running atop the bank of a waterway. They've made it to the heavily patrolled 12th District. This prompts Kei to caution Kanada about his behavior. They can't risk drawing any attention to themselves. We also get a glimpse of Nizu as he stumbles, bloody and feeble, through an alley. He still has his gun drawn as he does so. Ryu and Akira have also made their way into the 12th District without being apprehended. They step out from the cover of the thickly settled apartment block and see the waterway out in front of them, the wreckage of the resistance ship in the distance. Ryu hoists the boy onto his back and begins to run as fast as he can alongside the water. He's making some progress when he sees a single minuscule figure blocking his path. It's Sakaki. She questions Ryu, first asking where he's taking the boy, then if he still works for Nizu. The latter sounds more like an accusation, however. Ryu doesn't intend to answer, drawing his weapon instead, but it doesn't even matter. Sakaki makes a beeline right for him. She jumps out of the gym, leaping over him, hits him in the face as she does, causing him to fire an errant shot. The shot's not entirely useless, however. It alerts Kanada, Kei, and Chiyoko to his presence nearby. They approach the scene from the elevated walkway, where they see Ryu slumped on the ground as Sakaki pulls Akira by the hand. Kanada yells down, cockily rolling up his sleeves and calling Sakaki his little jumping jack as he prepares to face off with her once again. He bolts down the embankment, charging straight at her. She attempts to lift off the ground with her psychokinetic powers, but Kanada's ready for it. He throws a high kick that catches her mid-jump. It sends her tumbling to the ground. As he beckons Akira to follow him, Kei's face goes slack. She finally recognizes Ryu. As the two are overcome by their reunion, Sakaki takes advantage of the distraction. She shoves Kanada out of the way before scooping Akira up in her arms. In a single leap, she's up on top of the embankment with the coveted child. Once there, a figure looms over her. It's Colonel Shikishima. A speech bubble pops up, denoting a direct transmission from Takashi using his telekinetic powers. He tells Sakaki not to bother trying to escape. Caught off guard, it takes Sakaki a moment to steel her resolve. She sets the boy down as rage over the fate of her friends consumes her. Determination sets in, taking her on a direct path to the wizened-looking boy. Just then, Kanada and Chiyoko jump the wall at the top of the embankment. They came in pursuit of Sakaki, but are surprised to see the colonel and an Esper waiting there for them. Kanada cartoonishly tries to play it off as if he didn't mean to intrude, but when he attempts to run back into the canal, he sees that the military have descended on the area. Two squads currently flank Kei and Ryu, guns drawn. Hands on his hips, the colonel chides Kanada before admitting he's impressed that he survived so long. He then smiles and tells Kanada he won't be escaping this time. He explains how his forces have taken control over everything within a 20-mile radius. He estimates that he'll have 70% of Neo-Tokyo under his control by noon. It's then that a soldier pulls up with Kyoko and Masaru in tow. More soldiers follow Ryu and Kei as they scramble up the embankment to join their friends. Kanada looks at the colonel devilishly, saying that the gang's all there. Kanada plays it as if he's got an ace up his sleeve, but they're once again outgunned and outmatched. A fact that's particularly evident when Chiyoko tries to comfort Akira and two soldiers put their rifles right up to her head. Kanada's the first to step up, telling the soldiers to shove it. However, it appears as if he's not the only one who's fed up with the colonel's regime. Sakaki grits her teeth and charges. And that's when the chapter ends. Chapter 16, Akira Unleashed. Sakaki attempts to engage Takashi head-on. The boy braces for the attack, only to be left confused when it never lands. Sakaki pulled up last second, instead opting to jump onto the roof of a nearby building in an attempt to flee. The colonel orders his men to open fire. They unleash a barrage of bullets, several of which strike her from behind. She falls through the decayed ceiling, a cloud of dust kicking up from where she lands. Takashi can sense she's not dead yet, however. The colonel orders his men to retrieve her for tests. Simultaneously, Kyoko and Masaru become aware of Akira's presence nearby. Masaru calls out to him. A group of soldiers wrestle Kanada in the background. Akira begins to emotionlessly walk towards the other espers. Ecstatic to be reunited with his friend, Takashi runs over to him. The colonel senses something in the distance, looking off to a yellow apartment nearby. As Takashi excitedly points to Akira, a shot rings out. It strikes number 26 directly in the head. He keels over, blood spattering Akira as he lands. The colonel, the espers, Kanada, and Kei all look on in terror. Nearby we see Nizu, gun still smoking, as he laments missing his actual target. Masaru cries out to his fallen friend at the same time that the colonel orders his troops to open fire. Nizu dives away from the window as bullets rip through the building. As Takashi falls, we see the agony his death is causing not only Masaru and Kyoko, but also Akira. His eyes look alive for the first time since he's awoken. In unison, all three psychokinetic children begin to writhe with gritted teeth as their powers become triggered by the event, a reaction to Takashi's death that we will explore more in the future. Akira clutches his temples, power swells all around him. Far off in her temple, we see Lady Miyako's teapot clatter to the ground. She can sense Akira's power surging and she's terrified. She runs off of her dais to warn her disciples. Back at the scene, Akira screams out as he stands over Takashi's body, his agony causing him to vocalize for the first time since he's awoken. Everyone is shocked to hear it. The distraught boy holds his palms towards each other in front of himself. As he does, energy visibly swells between his hands. Kyoko cries out in an attempt to stop him, but the bright light of the energy continues to swell and illuminate further and further as it surges. Otomo takes a moment to highlight some of the scenes of normalcy surrounding the events. He shows a man and his son doing calisthenics in the backyard, a woman prepping a meal, a cat sunbathing as a parent struggles to get their child ready for a school day they'll never attend. All of them remain blissfully unaware of the catastrophe unfolding just outside of their doors. Akira's power is so intense that the light of it washes out even the sun, casting everyone in a white glow. Kyoko and Masaru communicate through their telekinetic link. She tells him that they need to get everyone to safety. Options limited, he decides to transport them to the roof of a nearby skyscraper. They jump into action just in time, as Akira's power begins to tear apart the landscape around him. We see the massive ball of energy spread as the espers do their best to teleport everyone, even the lifeless Takashi, onto the rooftop. Confusion overcomes Kanada as he blinks and finds himself hundreds of feet in the sky. The blast from Akira's outburst rips through the city, leveling everything in its path. We see the bloody Nizu struggle to stand before getting evaporated by the energy. Nearby, we witness Sakaki as well, also bloody and slumped on the ground. However, there's a smile on her face. She reaches out, calling for Lady Miyako. In the next panel, we see an astral version of the woman bending down to take Sakaki in her arms. Then, the girl's body is lifeless. At her temple, Lady Miyako cries out for her lost disciple. Atop the skyscraper, we see the flash of the blast heading towards Kaneda. It overwhelms him, turning him into a negative projection of himself before he dissolves into nothingness, right in front of Kei's eyes. Soldiers are falling all over themselves as they scramble to find anything resembling safety in this situation. The colonel still does his best to protect his men, despite the dire straits he finds himself in. We see him grab a soldier by the wrist to save him from falling off the building that the Espers teleported them to. As Kei screams out to Kaneda, we see the massive level of destruction Akira wrought. Buildings toppled over and crumbled. Cars got pulverized and trapped in massive sinkholes. And, most concerningly, the tides have gone crazy, causing massive amounts of water to flow into the already devastated city. Within the wreckage, we see that Ryu and Chiyoko were able to survive and are still together. Elsewhere, Kei stands atop a leaning building, looking out somberly at the wreckage. Not far away, the colonel mirrors her stance, while the Espers are incredibly drained due to the energy they had to expend. The devastation in the streets is incredible. Bodies are strewn all across a ravaged landscape that no longer resembles a city. At Lady Miyako's temple, we see them scramble to help the survivors. She orders her gates open, but that only those who promise their faith to her may enter. This is going to be important in the coming issues. On an isolated slab of concrete, we see Akira all by himself. In the next panel, a tattered figure approaches him. It's Tetsuo. He survived Seoul after all. Chapter 17, Emperor of Chaos. As this chapter starts, we get to see the amount of upheaval that has gone down in Neo-Tokyo, and it cannot be understated whatsoever. Chapter 17 opens from the perspective of a helicopter flying over the remains of the city. Not only did Akira's outburst cause incredible explosive damage, it caused extensive flooding as well. The helicopter is coming in to drop supplies and to pick up some survivors. On the ground, a group of refugees signals them by waving a piece of red fabric. The moment the chopper lands, the masses of citizens swarm it. The Red Cross crew says their first priority is rescuing the wounded, but that they will come back for everyone. However, the crowd doesn't listen. Instead, they board the ship. In the next panel, a man with a heavily bandaged head pulls a gun on the pilot. He says he's commandeering the helicopter and the supplies in the name of the Empire, a fact that confuses the pilot. Outside, more men tag the helicopter with spray paint, writing "Long live the Great Tokyo Empire" on it. Inside the chopper, the pilot says he's never heard of the Great Tokyo Empire. The bandaged man explains that that's because it's newly established. The Red Cross thinks the Empire's crazy, but it doesn't prevent them from being taken prisoner in the name of the Empire's leader, the Great Lord Akira. On the rubble of a fallen and submerged skyscraper, we see several men in wetsuits scaling the building. When they get to the top, they see that there's a man patrolling. They take him out easily, however, before ditching the wetsuits for less conspicuous outfits. It's a group of American soldiers sent to investigate Akira. They're led by Lieutenant George Yamada, who will continue to be a player moving forward. He orders them to split up and advises that they are zero contact from then on. Elsewhere, we see a group of refugees bracing for the arrival of a caretaker bot. As it passes below them, they push a massive boulder from atop a building. It damages the bot greatly, giving them an opening to attack. They jam the lid of the bot open, then fire inside the machine, taking it out easily. Lieutenant Yamada observes from the distance, noting that normal rioters shouldn't be able to take out such sophisticated machinery. Although I disagree with his logic, seeing as the caretakers have gotten the shit beat out of them ever since their introduction in the manga, but he's right. Those are no normal rioters. Elsewhere, in the destroyed city, we see a throne in the middle of the wreckage. As a boy approaches it, the masses bow in reverence of the great Lord Akira. Tetsuo, red cloth draped over his arm that took damage from Soul, stands with the boy. Since the recent explosion, they've created their own empire with a cult-like following. And while Akira is the figurehead, it's obvious that Tetsuo is in charge. He uses his power to lift an injured man from the crowd. The man soars through the air and lands in front of the placid child. The man looks down at his bandaged leg, aghast, before proclaiming to the crowd that he's been healed. He thanks Akira profusely, saying that he's a great lord. As Tetsuo bows before the boy, he smiles slyly out of sight of the crowd. The sick and injured begin to flock en masse, begging to be healed. Amongst the crowd is a woman with bandages all over her face. As she passes, a group of thugs descend on her, excited to see a woman they can exploit. They circle, ready to attack, until a massive woman comes to her aid. It's Chiyoko, which means the bandaged woman must be Kei. While the men are busy taunting Chiyoko, she hoists a massive rocket and brains a dude, absolutely smashing his skull. The rest of the gang swarms her, but they're no match. She swings the rocket like it's nothing, taking out thug after thug. Unfortunately, one of the thugs was able to grab Kei. As he disgustingly licks her, she slashes his tongue off, proving she can take care of herself. As one of the men decides to get a gun out, Chiyoko teaches him why you never bring a gun to a rocket fight. She ignites the projectile and takes them all out in a massive blast. We then catch up with Lieutenant Yamada, who stops in a bar. Through his transaction, we learn that the city has regressed to a bartering system. He's able to procure some rot-gut liquor and, more importantly, some information, all for the tidy sum of a single watch. The bartender fills him in on the cult of Akira, as well as Tetsuo's role in it. As he does, we see a familiar-looking man listening in on him nearby. The bartender goes on, explaining that the stated goal of the fledgling nation is to cure the world. Yamada asks about the soldiers, to which the bartender responds that most of them are taking refuge in the city. The military is no more. At that point, the familiar man stands from his seat and leaves. One of the soldiers appears to recognize him as he does, so he follows. That man walks through the rubble and wreckage. Just as he's about to descend a hill, the soldier calls out to him. It turns out it's Colonel Shikishima. The soldier is so happy to see him, he begs to be taken along, without even knowing where the colonel's going. The colonel just looks at him stoically and tells him it's too late. Our perspective then shifts back to Kei and Chiyoko as they enter the bombed-out remains of a mall. They ascend the steps and head into a well-hidden alcove where we see that they have the two remaining espers with them, Kyoko and Masaru. Both of them are in pretty bad shape. Kei prepares a needle, then injects them with some random drugs, hopeful that they work. Masaru takes his shot, but Kyoko struggles when Kei attempts to give her one. With what little energy she has left, she tells Kei they need to go to see number 19. Another one of the telekinetically endowed test subjects from the military's Akira project. Back in the bar, Lieutenant Yamada learns about Lady Miyako. Apparently there's an East versus West beef brewing, as she started her own cult in the East. Since opening her gates to the sick, hungry, and homeless, she's amassed a massive and devout following. We see them in prayer as they worship her in her temple. She, however, is having a premonition about Tetsuo's role in the upcoming events. We then shift to him as he sits in front of a sickle moon. His aide beckons him to attend to his audience. They're all handed a pill and instructed to take it. Naturally, they're hesitant, but Tetsuo persists, telling them that Lord Akira values courage above all else. When that doesn't work, he continues trying to convince them, saying the pills are nothing. He demonstrates how little they matter by popping one like it's nothing, holding it on his tongue before swallowing it. As he does, the reluctant men follow suit. Tetsuo gives them a rock and tells them to test to see if their powers have awakened by trying to get it to levitate. The first one to attempt it regrets it instantly, as blood flows from every orifice as he slumps over, dead. The other men are scared, but know they can't stop. All of them end up bleeding and slumped over. However, one survived. Tetsuo observes the entire scene nonchalantly from Akira's throne, as he instructs his aide to check for survivors, of which there's one. He orders them to train him up and add him to their telekinetic army if he ever wakes up. He then vacates the area through a Salvador Dali-esque scene of wreckage. Once he's away from his followers, he finally gives in to the massive amount of discomfort he's been hiding. It's clear that Tetsuo's unwell. He stumbles forward, grabbing fistfuls of pills from a pile on the table, as Akira just watches. Alright, so that was it. Chapters 15 through 17 of Akira. I love the way the manga has turned out. I don't know if you guys remember, but this has actually been my first time reading it. This whole cult of Akira thing is like a blip on the radar in the anime, and Lady Miyako is actually, she's in it, but she's on Akira's side as they march on the military. It's just so much different. Here we have a lot more players and a lot more just depth and detail. Honestly, it builds so much more intrigue about how the city is responding to the chaos and the revelation of the superpowered individuals. I also love the insertion of the American forces here. This signals a huge shift where we get some insight into how the world outside of Neo Tokyo is responding to the catastrophe. Remember, the last time Akira used his powers, World War III broke out, so it's really interesting to me to get to see another nation's response to the effort this time. Things seemingly only continue to diverge from the anime as we move on as well, although I will say the endgame isn't too much different from the anime. We just take a much different path to get there, and I do think the manga does a better job of setting up the power system at play and thus tying together the disparate elements that make up the story much more conclusively. Honestly, I can't wait to share the rest with you guys. That's it for now, though. I'll see you next time, fellow nostalgia seekers.